All right, let's kick off our deep dive today, and we're going all the way back to 1963, November 22nd to be exact, the JFK assassination. Now, you might be thinking, haven't we heard everything there is to hear about JFK?
Well, there's always something new to uncover, right?
Right.
Especially when you have groups like Dealey Plaza UK doing such in-depth research.
Exactly. And they published their findings in this journal called Dealey Plaza Echo, and that's what we're diving into today. Some really fascinating stuff.
Definitely some rabbit holes to go down.
So are you ready to get started?
Absolutely. Lead the way.
Okay, let's jump right in. One of the things that always gets me about the JFK assassination is the sound of the shooting itself. You know, like how many shots were there? Where did they come from? It's a bit of a mess.
It really is. And the Echo has this article called An In-Depth Study of the Acoustical Evidence. It's by this guy, Jason Wakefield.
Wakefield, I don't think I recognize that name.
Yeah, he's not an acoustics expert by trade. His background's actually in agriculture.
Really? So what's an agriculture expert doing analyzing the acoustics of the JFK assassination?
Well, he's clearly got a passion for this. He basically took all the raw data the scientists collected and applied his own analytical skills to it.
Interesting.
Yeah, and he comes to some pretty surprising conclusions.
Like what?
Well, one of the big ones is that he thinks the House Select Committee on Assassinations, you know, the HSCA,
Yeah, I've heard of them.
he thinks they might have missed a shot.
Missed a shot. You mean they didn't count all the bullets?
Not exactly. So the HSCA concluded there were 4 shots fired. Based on this recording they had, a dictabelt recording from a Dallas police motorcycle.
I've heard of that. That's the one they used to say there was a shot from the grassy knoll.
Right. Exactly. But even that conclusion was controversial. Lots of debate about whether the recording was even reliable.
I can see how adding another potential shot into the mix would make things even more complicated.
Oh, absolutely. There were all these arguments about background noise from the motorcycle messing up the analysis, questions about sound levels and echoes, even discrepancies in the timing of the sounds on the recording. It was a mess.
Sounds like it.
And then, to make matters worse, the National Research Council, or NRC, they basically came in and said the whole HSCA analysis was flawed.
So we have experts disagreeing with experts.
Pretty much. Makes it tough to know who to believe.
Yeah, no kidding. So where does Wakefield fit into all of this?
Well, what he does is fascinating. He takes the NRC's critique and uses their own methods to challenge their findings.
So he's saying if you use your methods correctly, you might actually end up supporting the HSCA.
Exactly. Pretty bold.
I'll say, it really makes you think about the whole nature of scientific analysis.
Doesn't it?
Like, if 2 groups of experts can look at the same data and come to completely different conclusions, how much can we really trust any of it?
That's a great question, and I don't know if there's an easy answer, especially in a case like this where the stakes are so high.
Right. The JFK assassination is loaded with political and historical baggage.
Absolutely.
It's not just about science, it's about something much bigger.
I think that's a good place to leave it for now.
Yeah, let's take a break and come back to this. We've got a lot more to unpack. All right, we're back, and I'm ready to dig into some more of this Dealey Plaza Echo material. There's so much to unpack.
It's a real rabbit hole, that's for sure.
So, where do we go next? What else caught your eye?
Well, I think it's time we talked about Marina Oswald.
Yeah, she's kind of a key figure in all this, right? I mean, married to the alleged assassin.
Exactly, and the Echo has an article called The Photographic Record. It's by John J. Johnson,
Okay.
and it focuses on her Warren Commission testimony, specifically her statements about Oswald's rifle.
The one they say he used to shoot Kennedy.
Yep, that's one.
So what does she have to say about it?
Well, that's the thing. She couldn't definitively identify it as belonging to Lee.
Really? You'd think she'd be familiar with her own husband's rifle.
You'd think so, right?
Right.
But she actually told the commission, and I'm quoting here, "It was a stick with metal. That's all a rifle is to me up to this day."
Wow, that's a pretty strong statement.
It is, and there's more. She also testified about Oswald supposedly practicing with the rifle at Love Field.
Love Field.
Yeah, the airport. But Johnson points out in his article that geographically that's just not very probable.
Like it wouldn't have made sense for him to be practicing there?
Exactly. So there are inconsistencies in her account.
So what's Johnson's theory? Is he saying she was lying?
Not necessarily. He suggests she might have been deliberately vague or misleading, maybe to protect herself or her children.
I mean, can you imagine being in her shoes, testifying against your own husband, potentially implicating him in the assassination of the
It
president?
must have been incredibly difficult.
Absolutely.
And Johnson highlights this exchange during her testimony, where she seems to be kind of deflecting questions about where Oswald practiced shooting. Like she's trying to avoid saying something that could incriminate him further.
So she's playing it safe,
I think so.
trying to navigate a very tricky situation. It's like a game of chess almost.
Aye.
Every word carefully chosen.
And then there's this whole thing about Oswald shooting at leaves in a park. Apparently, Marina mentioned this to Jean de Mohrenchild, who then testified about it to the commission.
I've heard that story.
Yeah, but Johnson argues that it's highly unlikely. I mean, picture it. Someone openly carrying a military rifle with a scope through a public park.
That would cause quite a stir.
Absolutely. Someone would have called the police right away.
No doubt.
So whether Marina was intentionally misleading the commission or genuinely misremembered some details, her testimony remains a source of debate.
It makes you wonder how reliable eyewitness accounts really are,
Doesn't it?
especially in a situation like this, where there's so much stress and trauma.
Absolutely. Memory is a fragile thing.
Speaking of fragile, what about the dictabelt recording? We were talking about that earlier.
Oh yeah, the infamous dictabelt.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around all those technical details.
It's a lot to process.
It's like Wakefield saying there might have been 5 shots instead of 4. Why does that even matter?
It matters because the number of shots is key to the whole question of conspiracy.
Right, the lone gunman versus multiple shooters debate.
Exactly. If there were more shots than Oswald could fired, then that opens the door to the possibility of someone else being involved.
Oh, okay, I see that. So this isn't just about acoustics. It's about something much bigger.
It absolutely is.
It's about whether we're getting the full story about what happened in Dallas.
And Wakefield is definitely challenging the official narrative.
How so?
Well, he points out inconsistencies in the NRC's analysis. He even accuses them of manipulating data to fit their conclusions.
Whoa, hold on. Manipulating data. That's a serious accusation.
It is, and he provides some pretty compelling evidence.
Like what?
Well, one example is the whole issue of sirens on the dictabelt recording.
Sirens?
Yeah, the NRC claimed that the lack of sirens for a certain period after the shooting proved the police motorcycle wasn't in Dealey Plaza when the shots were fired.
Okay.
But Wakefield challenges that. He argues that the only vehicles with sirens were the police cars at the front of the motorcade, the motorcycle in question. The one with a dictabelt recorder. It was positioned much further back.
So the sirens wouldn't have been picked up on the recording?
Exactly.
That makes sense?
And he even references newsreels that show the motorcycle officer's movements after the shooting, which contradict the officer's own testimony.
So we have conflicting accounts.
It's a mess.
And then there's the missing time on the recording.
Oh, yeah. The NRC claimed there was a full minute of missing time.
Which would throw the whole timeline off.
Right. But Wakefield has a different interpretation.
What's that?
He suggests that instead of missing time, there might have been a needle jump on the recording device.
A needle jump.
Yeah, it would cause a time displacement.
But not actually lost any information.
Exactly. Like a glitch in the system.
So not a deliberate omission of data?
Right. And he backs this up by analyzing the timestamps on the recording.
Okay, so he's got some technical evidence to support his theory.
He does, and it's pretty convincing.
But even if we accept Wakefield's analysis, it still doesn't answer the fundamental question, does it? Who shot JFK?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I don't think we'll ever have a definitive answer.
It's a mystery that continues to fascinate and frustrate us.
Absolutely.
But that's part of what makes it so compelling. It keeps us searching for answers, trying to piece together the puzzle.
And who knows, maybe one day we'll finally crack the code.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But until then, we'll just have to keep digging.
That's the spirit.
All right, let's wrap up our deep dive into the JFK assassination. And I think we need to talk about the Secret Service. I mean, their role in all of this has been debated for decades.
Yeah, it's definitely a controversial topic.
And you know Al Carrier's article in the Echo, the United States Secret Service, conspiracy to assassinate a president, it really gets into the nitty-gritty of their actions that day.
Yeah, Carrier doesn't hold back.
And, you know, he's coming at this with a lot of experience, right? Military background, law enforcement, specialized training in dignitary protection.
He knows his stuff.
So he's not just speculating, he's analyzing the situation with real expertise.
Exactly.
And one of the things that always gets me is the on-scene reaction of the agents. Or, I guess, lack of reaction.
Yeah, like why didn't they move faster? Why didn't they immediately shield the president?
Those are the questions everyone asks, right?
Right, but Carrier offers a different perspective.
Oh, interesting.
He talks about this difference between split-second reaction and split-second response.
So like reacting without thinking versus actually processing the situation.
Exactly. He says our brains need time to process information, especially in a chaotic situation like that.
You're hearing gunshots, people are screaming, there's chaos everywhere.
Your senses are overwhelmed.
So it takes a moment for your brain to catch up.
Even for trained professionals like Secret Service agents.
They're not superhuman.
Nope, they're human just like the rest of us.
I guess that makes sense.
Carrier actually cites research showing that even well-trained law enforcement officers, they take an average of 1.5 to 2 seconds to react to a sudden threat.
Wow, that's longer than I would have thought.
And that's in a controlled environment. Imagine being in Dealey Plaza that day. The crowds, the noise, the suddenness of it all.
Yeah, it must have been a sensory overload.
Absolutely. They were probably operating on pure adrenaline.
Instinct kicking in.
Right.
Plus, they had just navigated those massive crowds on Main Street.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
They were probably already on high alert.
And Carrier talks about that, too. He says being on constant high alert is exhausting.
Mentally and physically?
Yeah, you can only maintain that level of focus for so long.
It's like when you're driving a long distance.
And you start to zone out even though you're trying to stay focused.
Exactly.
It happens to the best of us.
So Carrier's saying the agents might have been experiencing a moment of fatigue.
Or a lapse in concentration.
It's human nature.
Right, he's not excusing their actions. But he's saying we need to understand the context.
The human factors involved.
Exactly.
He also talks about liability.
Oh, yeah, that's an important point.
What did he say about that?
He said trained officers are always aware of the potential consequences of their actions.
Like, they could be held accountable for using excessive force.
Exactly.
Or for overreacting to a situation.
So there's this hesitation, a need to assess the situation before taking action.
Which takes time.
Even if it's just a fraction of a second. It can make a difference in a fast-moving situation.
So the agents were in a tough spot.
No doubt about it.
They had to make life or death decisions in a split second, knowing that their actions would be scrutinized for years to come.
It's a lot of pressure.
And in this case, they were unable to prevent the tragedy.
It's a reminder that even with the best training and intentions, sometimes things go wrong.
And I guess that's why we're still talking about this today, trying to make sense of it all.
It's a mystery that continues to captivate us.
The JFK assassination, it's a story that just won't die.
And maybe it shouldn't. Maybe it's important to keep asking questions.
To keep searching for answers.
Even if we never find them.
I think you're right. Well, that's about all the time we have for today, but I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the JFK assassination. It's been a fascinating journey.
It has.
And I hope you've learned something new along the way. Remember to keep those minds open and those questions coming. Until next time.